As you can see, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and I love the video games, the 1 and 2. 2 is awesome. I finally went and saw Spider-Man Brand New Day, and it's the worst representation of the mutant saga I have ever seen. I'm spoiling it here. So, Jean Grey is a villain. Jean Grey, who I remember in the movies and in the TV shows, she was a calm person who came from a background of parents who didn't understand her, but Professor X, Xavier Charles, brought her in and took her under her wing and gave her a home in a school where parents don't accept her and parents have issues with her. She had a dark side, but the dark side was kept hidden and it was kept good. She was a good person. The one in Spider-Man Brand New Day is a sinister manipulator and uses her power to manipulate people into transitioning her consciousness through their bodies. It's pure manipulation and abuse that this Jean Grey is doing. She's a villain. In the comics, in the movies, what I remember in the early 2000s, Jean Grey was a good person who did come from background, and yet in this Spider-Man Brand New Day, she's a villain. She abused and manipulated the Hulk, controlling him and punishing him to punish damage control, which is going to be probably the future of the MRD, Mutant Response Division, which, okay, now we have a black actor playing a white character in the comics, a black actor playing a character who's a conservative, anti-mutant person against the mutant kind. He decided because he was in an Apple TV series called Serenity or whatever. That's a poor message, because the mutant registration is all full of white supremacist white people and conservatives, religious people. I never seen a black person in the MRD. If you think that sounds familiar, then you have been watching Tim Burton movies all your life, and you know that guy creates poor representation of the African American community and just evil, manipulative conjuring of villains who play an African American representation role. I mean, even in the new Beetlejuice movie, he had only the black people represented in the underworld of the dead carcasses in the movie. So yeah, if you think this sounds familiar, then you've been watching and noticing how Tim Burton creates evil representation and dark representation of the African American community every time in his movie. So yeah, that's why this movie seems a little sinister to me, that the African American character who played a white character role, who is a supremacist white conservative person, they chose to have a guy with background of Serenity in this Apple TV movie series to become the villain in this role. Seems kind of Tim Burton-ish, don't you think? In the Wolverine X-Men universe, I remember seeing them as white supremacist people. The conservatives that were against mutants, they were all white people. And so they made a supremacist African American. There's something very not right here. And it's so sick and twisted and manipulative that Jean Grey was a villain. She was an antagonist. And the real villain was the person from Damage Control who abused her sister. And so she goes out of control for her mind, and also abuses Peter Parker with the love of his life, Michelle Jones. This is not the Jean Grey I grew up with. This is the worst representation of Jean Grey. This is the worst representation. I think they picked a great actor. I really do. I think they picked a great actor to play Jean Grey. But yet they made her a manipulative, abusive mutant who goes out of her way to hurt people and cause damage. And yet, the Jean Grey that I know had an abusive past with the Phoenix. The Phoenix inside her, the red fire bird that she conjures and it takes it over. That's the Jean Grey that version that I remember. Not this Jean Grey who is abused and abusive, because abusers can be abused, and she was abused and she was manipulated in damage control, and yet she goes out of her way to controlling other people, abusing, hurting other people in the MCU, damaging them and threatening Peter Parker's girlfriend's life. Well, ex-girlfriend. This is not the Jean Grey I grew up with. This is the worst Spider-Man movie. This is the worst X-Men Mutant Saga intro into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I hope anybody who's watching this know that Destin Daniels did a terrible job representing mutants into the MCU. Making them these manipulators, abusive people. I mean, yes, there are histories in the X-Men universe that have X-Men villains that abuse and manipulate people, like Dr. Sinister, or Charlie Xavier's friend, Magneto, but this Jean Grey was not the Jean Grey that I grew up with. This is the worst representation. This is also the worst Spider-Man movie I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. I have never seen a Spider-Man or have a villain who is also in the X-Men universe. There were really great scenes that they cut from the movie, which they should have added and put in there, like Tobias Whale, who the actor from Black Lightning, played a villain of Tombstone in two movies, Spider-Man Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Brand New Day. That could have been an excellent, more profound villain in the MCU saga, and the Mutant Saga, also against the Mutant Saga, because he is actually, in a way, a mutant. And it could have been really cool to have an intro between Jean Grey versus Tombstone or something like that, or against Damage Control. But Damage Control was the real villain. But it's so dark and manipulative that Jean Grey is a villain in this Spider-Man movie. It's the worst Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. I think it's the worst representation intro into the Mutant Saga. She manipulated the Hulk. She abused the Hulk. Okay, Jean Grey never manipulated people in the comics, unless it was taken over by the Phoenix inside her, that red dark thing. That was when she manipulated people. Remember in the X-Men Last Stand movie? Yeah, that was because there was a dark side in her, and Charles Xavier and Magneto were trying to help her with it. But it got out of hand, and that's how she became a villain. Not that she was abused or came from a background where she thinks it's okay to use her mutant powers to abuse and manipulate people. It's so dark and twisted what Spider-Man's Brand New Day did. And I hope that they learned that this is not the Mutant Saga intro we should never get, where the mutants are the villains of this story. And yet they painted a dark picture on the Mutant Saga. So, Spider-Man Brand New Day, 6 out of 10. I'm sorry, but there's just something very wrong to me that is abusive in this continuity, that is giving a message that mutants are dangerous, that mutants are manipulative and abusive. I just don't see it being a good intro. I think the X-Men Wolverine, even in Wednesday, all the African American characters are used as manipulative and dark sinister, evil people, and just really rude, mean people like bullies in schools, like Wednesday attended in that community. So yeah, there's never a good reason to sometimes have a white person. I believe the X-Men Mutants intro in Wolverine and in Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 1 video game, I think that's a better intro and a better continuity in the X-Men universe, in the X-Men saga, in a PlayStation Universal world. We even got an abandoned X-Mansion in Spider-Man 2, if you know what I'm talking about. It's the abandoned building that the fire cult uses, conjuring the flame of carnage, if you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think Spider-Man 2 video game had a great intro into the Mutant Saga. And I'm excited to play the X-Men and Wolverine video game coming this year, but I am going to play it probably sometime next year, because that's how I am. Like and subscribe, and hopefully you subscribe to the channel. Thank you. This is Corey Daydream, signing off.